The night we put my father in the ground, my wolf would not let me bury him. I had the first stone in my hands, cold enough to burn. The whole hold of Fenmark gathered in the falling snow behind me, when the great gray shape that had run at my side for 11 years broke from the line of mourners and went to the wrong cairn. Not my father's, the old one at the edge of the burial field, low and half sunk, the one no living man could name, the cairn we walked past every winter and never spoke of. My wolf reached it and began to dig. Roan, my steward Havard said my name the way you say it to a man standing too near a ledge. Roan, leave it, it's the grief in the beast, set the stone. I did not set the stone. I stood with my father's weight in my 2 hands and watched my wolf tear frozen earth from a grave that everyone in Fenmark had agreed, without ever agreeing aloud, to forget. You must understand what a wolf is in a hold like ours. It is the truest part of a man, the part that cannot lie to itself. Mine had never once been wrong. It had found the child lost on the lock ice when the trackers gave her up. It had smelled the rot in a treaty before the ink was dry. And now, on the worst night of my life, with my father not yet under stone, it had turned its back on him to claw at a nameless mound, and it was making a sound I had never heard it make. Not a howl. Something lower. The sound a creature makes when it has found a thing it cannot leave. "Cover it over," said a voice near the front. Lady Oren, my father's chatelaine these 30 years, her face white above her black furs. "It is unseemly. The old Alpha is waiting for his rest." She was right, and I did not move to obey her, and I have thought since that the whole rest of my life turned on that one refusal. I gave my father to Havard's arms. I crossed the field to my wolf, and I knelt in the snow beside the forgotten cairn and put my own hands to the stones. They came away easier than a decades-old grave should. That was the first wrong thing. A true burial cairn settles, the earth locks it. This one had been opened and closed before, the stones fitted back by hands, not by time. Underneath them was not the shallow scrape of a grave but the mouth of something deeper. A shaft, a worked edge, a way down. Cold air came up out of it, and on that cold air, faint as a thought, was a scent. I have no clean words for what the scent did to me. Every account I have ever heard of the bond speaks of fire, of a surge, of the wolf rising up roaring. Mine did none of that. What I felt, kneeling over that black shaft with the snow coming down, was the opposite of all my life's noise. A sudden, total quiet, as though every clock in the world had been ticking without my knowing and all at once stopped. A silence that had a shape. A silence with a person in it. Somewhere below me, someone was alive. "Torches," I said, and my voice did not sound like my own. "Rope, now." Havard caught my arm. "Roan, there is nothing down there but old dark. Bury your father. Whatever the beast smells, it is decades dead." "It is breathing," I said. The hold went silent around me. I saw Lady Oren's hand close on her furs until the knuckles stood white. I saw 2 of the older guards look at each other, one quick look, and I did not understand it yet, but I filed it away, because a king who does not read the faces around him does not stay king. They brought the rope. Against every counsel, against the custom of my own house, on the night I was meant to mourn, I tied it round my waist and went down into the ground. The shaft dropped the height of 3 men, and opened into a chamber I had never known lay beneath our burial field, an undercroft of fitted stone, dry and close, the kind of place the old builders made and the new ones forget. My torch showed me a low vaulted room. It showed me a wooden door, banded in iron, set into the far wall, and it showed me that the door had been sealed from the outside, the iron pin driven home, and then the whole seemed packed with lead, the way you close a thing you never mean to open. You do not seal a grave from the outside. The dead do not push. I put my hand to the door and I felt through the wood the faint warmth of a living body on the other side, and the quiet in me became almost unbearable, and I said, I did not decide to say it, it came out of me, "I'm here. I'm going to open it. Cover your eyes from the light." There was a silence. Then muffled, cracked with disuse, so soft I felt it more than heard it, a voice said, "You came the wrong way." I broke that door. I am not a small man, and my wolf was in my arms by then, and I tore the lead seam and drove the pin backward and hauled the door wide, and the torchlight fell into a second chamber. And there, sitting very straight against the far wall, one thin hand raised against the brightness, dressed in the rotted gray of a servant's gown gone to rags, was a woman. Alive, pale as the underside of a leaf, her dark hair grown long and matted, her eyes squeezed shut against a light she had not seen in I did not yet know how long, but alive, breathing, steady even now, even here, not clawing at me, not weeping. Sitting up straight in the dark, she had been left to die in, as though she had been waiting a long time and had decided some while ago that she would meet whatever came on her feet, or as near to her feet as she could manage. "Don't be afraid," I said. "I'm not afraid of you," she said, and lowered her hand and opened her eyes and looked at me. "I stopped being afraid of doors a long time ago." Her eyes found mine in the torchlight, and the quiet in me, the shaped silence, closed like a hand. I knew her. I cannot tell you how, for I had never in my life seen her face. But I knew her the way you know the word for water, not learned, not reached for, simply there, older than memory. My whole grave errand, my father cold in the snow above us, the sealed door, the years of hush, all of it fell away, and there was only this. A woman in the dark who was mine, and had been mine before either of us drew breath, and had been buried alive beneath my own house while I feasted and warred and grew into my crown 3 floors above her head. "What is your name?" I asked her. It was the hardest question I have ever asked, because I was afraid of the answer, because a name would make her real and make the 11 years real. "Sissel," she said, "I was a hearth girl. I carried water and I banked fires and I saw a thing I should not have seen. That is all I am, that is the whole of it." She wet her cracked lips. "How long?" I did not want to answer. "The old Alpha died 2 nights past," I said. "We buried him tonight." Something moved across her face, not grief. She had not known him as I had, but a kind of terrible arithmetic, a woman counting. "Then it has been the whole of his sickness," she said quietly. "They put me down here when he took to his bed. They said I would keep until he passed and could not undo it." She looked at the sealed door, at the lead I had torn. "They meant me to be found as bones, if I was ever found at all. A hearth girl who ran off years ago. Everyone knew I ran off. They told it so often that even I began to wonder if I had. I have led men into battle. I have stood over the bodies of friends. I did not know, until that moment in the undercroft, that a quiet sentence spoken by a steady woman could open a pit under a man wider than any grave. Someone in my hold, someone who had stood in the snow tonight with their face arranged in mourning, had walled a living woman beneath my burial field and taught my whole people to call it a running away. "Who?" I said. My wolf was so far up in me that the word came out with the growl still in it, and I saw her flinch, and I hated that I had made her flinch, and I gentled everything in me by main force. "Sissel, I am the Alpha King of Fenmark. My name is Roan. No one will ever put you behind a door again, but I need you to tell me, who did this?" "If I tell you," she said, "will you believe a hearth girl over a great lady? Because that is the shape of it, and it has always been the shape of it, and it is the reason I am down here and not up there. I found you," I said, "because I could not make myself bury my father while you were breathing under the ground. My wolf knew you before I did. Believe you. Sissel, I would believe you against my own eyes." She looked at me a long moment. Whatever she was weighing, I have never resented it. A woman left to die in the dark has earned the right to weigh a man before she spends her one truth on him. "Give me your hand first," she said. "I want to stand up out of this room on my own 2 feet, holding onto a living person, before I say another word. I have been promising myself that for a long time." I gave her my hand. Her fingers closed round mine, thin and cold and shaking, and the shaped silence in me became something with a sound in it after all, low and warm, a note held under everything, the bond settling into place like a bone going back into its socket. She rose. She was unsteady and she was slight, and she came up out of that chamber with her chin level, and I have crowned queens who did not rise the way that Hearthgirl rose. We came up into the snow together. I will not soon forget the faces that met us at the mouth of the shaft, the whole hold in its morning black, my father's bier waiting, and every eye going wide at the sight of a dead, runaway Hearthgirl climbing up out of the burial field on the arm of their king. And two faces, only two, that did not go wide with wonder. Two faces that went white with something else. Lady Oren, and beside her my father's old master-at-arms, Caddoc, one of the two men who had traded that quick look when I said it is breathing. Sissel did not point. She was cleverer than that, and she had had years to think. She simply turned her head slow and looked at the two of them and let the whole hold watch her look. And in the silence she said to me, but pitched for all of them. I carried water to the muniment room the night the old Alpha's brother died. Everyone was told he died of the coughing sickness. He did not. I saw who was standing over him, and I saw what was in her hand, and I dropped my ewer and she heard it break. Her voice did not shake now. The old Alpha never knew. He mourned his brother honest. He would have had her hanged. So she could not let him know, and she could not let me speak, and a Hearthgirl is easy to make disappear. You have only to say she ran and dig deep enough, and wait for the one man who might have dug her up to grow old and die. She turned back to me. Your father did not bury me, Roan. He never knew the ground beneath his own field was hollow. The lady who served him buried me to keep the murder of his brother from ever reaching his ears. And tonight, when he was safely dead and could never learn it, she meant to let me become the bones under the cairn at last. I have been told since that I did not raise my voice. That is the strange thing. I felt as though I were roaring, and the men who were there say I spoke very low. I turned to Lady Oren, who had run my father's household for 30 years, who had put me to bed as a boy, and I said, answer her. And Oren, who was clever, who had been clever for 30 years, made the one mistake that clever people make when the ground has gone out from under them. She reached for the old lie because it was the only floor she had ever stood on. The girl is mad, she said. She ran, my lord, years ago. Everyone knows she ran, and now she crawls out of some hole with a wild tale too. Out of which hole? I said. She stopped. You said she ran, I said, years ago, and here she is climbing out of a sealed chamber beneath my burial field, a chamber closed with lead from the outside. If she ran, Oren, how came she to be behind a door that only locks from without? A runaway does not brick herself in and pack the seam with lead and then sit down in the dark to wait 11 years for the truth. I heard my own voice going quieter and quieter, which is the thing my people fear in me, though I did not plan it. You have just told this whole hold that you know she was in a hole, before I have said where I found her. How do you know where I found her, Oren, unless you were the one who put her there? The snow came down. Nobody moved. And I watched 30 years of a clever woman's certainty leave her face all at once, because she heard, as we all heard, that she had buried herself with her own mouth. Caddoc broke first, the master-at-arms, the strong man. Always the strong ones break first when the thing that breaks is not a body. He went down on his knees in the snow and said it had been Oren's doing, that she had made him carry the stones, that he had wanted for 11 years to speak and had been afraid. And I let him talk because a coward's confession is still a confession, and because Sissel was listening and she had earned every word of it. I did not kill them. I want to say that plainly because my father's father would have, and the hold half expected it, and there was a black hour that night when my wolf wanted it. But Sissel's hand was still in mine, and a killing would have been about my rage, and nothing that happened from here on was going to be about my rage. It was going to be about her. I gave them to the Lock Road cells under guard, to be tried at the winter court in the open, before the whole hold, with Sissel's word entered first in full. The thing they had spent 11 years and a woman's life to prevent. That night there was only Sissel. I took her not to a cell nor to a servant's pallet but to the warm rooms, and I stood in the doorway like a boy, while the women of the hold brought her water that she was free to drink, and a fire she was free to sit beside, and a door. I made them show her this. I made them work the latch in front of her, a door that opened from the inside by her own hand, whenever she wished. You need not stay in Fenmark at all, I told her, and it cost me to say it with the bond singing under my ribs, but it had to be said and it had to be true. You owe this place nothing. It owes you everything and can never pay it. If you want a horse and an escort and a purse and the whole world instead, you will have them within the hour and no one will ever ask you a question again. I found you. That does not make you mine to keep. Nothing makes you mine to keep. You have had enough of being kept. She was quiet a while, sitting by the fire she was allowed to sit by, turning her freed hands over in the light as though she had forgotten what they looked like warm. Not tonight, she said at last. Tonight I would like to sleep in a room where I can hear the wind. That is all I can decide tonight. Do not ask me to decide anything larger than the wind. The wind, then, I said, nothing larger. I slept across the threshold that night, outside her door, because I could not make myself go further from her than that, and because I would not go nearer than she had asked. Twice in the dark I heard her wake sharp, the way a person wakes who has forgotten and then remembered where they are. Both times I heard her find the latch with her hand and work it open, closed, open, not to leave, only to feel that it moved. And I lay on the cold stone and listened to a woman teach herself, one turn at a time, that a door was a thing she owned now, and I thought that I had never in my life heard a sound I wanted so much to protect. It was many nights before she told me the whole of the 11 years, and she never told it all at once. She gave it to me in pieces, and I learned quickly not to reach for the pieces but to wait for them, the way you wait for a wild thing to come to the hand. The first piece she gave me was the counting. I kept the days by the water, she said one evening, weeks in, when the weight had begun to come back to her frame and she could sit a whole hour without her eyes going to the door. They lowered a skin down the shaft every so often on a cord. Not on any pattern, I think they did it careless, so no one would notice bread and water going missing regular, but I decided it came at dusk. I had no reason. I just decided it because I needed one fixed thing, and I counted the skins, and I called each one a day even when I knew it wasn't. 11 years of days I made up out of a water skin on a string. When you asked me how long down there, and I did the sum in my head, I already knew. I had been keeping the sum for 11 years so that if anyone ever came, I could tell them exactly how long, to the day I invented. I was so afraid I would be found and not be able to say how long, that the years would just be a smear. Why did that matter so much? I asked gently, the exact count. She looked at me as though the answer were the simplest thing in the world. Because if I could say the number, she said, then it happened to a person, to Sissel. If I couldn't say the number, it happened to nobody in the dark, and nobody is what they wanted me to be. She turned a water cup in her hands. She always had something in her hands those first months, I think, so she could prove to herself they were free. I would not let them have that. They could have the years. They could not have my name on the years. The second piece she gave me was the singing, and she gave it to me by accident. I came to her door one afternoon and heard, through it, a thread of a tune, very low, and I stood and did not go in because a man does not walk into a thing like that. When I did come in, she stopped, embarrassed, and I said please, and she would not, and days later she told me why. I sang down there, she said, not because I was brave. Because a voice is a body's proof to itself that it still has a shape. In the dark you stop being able to feel the edges of yourself. You can't see your hand, you can't see the room, and after long enough you can't quite believe your own outline. But a voice comes out of you and goes into the room, and the room gives it back a little changed. And for as long as the note lasts you know how big you are and how far the walls are. So I sang. Not songs mostly. Just proof. I made a lot of proof over 11 years. She smiled small. I am probably not very good. I never once got to hear it in a room with corners. I had a stonemason widen a certain window that week and set a bench in it, so that the wind she liked came through with the sun. I did not tell her why. I only wanted her voice to have a good room to be given back from, when she was ready to let it be heard. It was half a year before she sang where I could hear it, and when she did I had to leave the corridor and stand somewhere alone for a while, and I will not write here what that was like, because some things a man keeps. The last piece, the hardest, she gave me the night before the trial. She told me what she had decided to do near the end, before my wolf found the wrong cairn. I had stopped counting, she said. That is the part I have not told you. The last, I don't know, it might have been a year, it might have been a season, I lost the string of it, I stopped inventing the days. I stopped singing. I had decided no one was coming, and I had decided that when I was sure of it, truly sure, I would stop drinking the water, not from despair. I want you to hear the difference, Roan, it matters to me that you hear it. Not because I wanted to die. Because I wanted one time to choose. Everything that had happened to me down there had been chosen by other people. The burying, the water on its careless string, the not coming. I thought, the one thing left that is mine is whether I keep opening my mouth for their water. And I thought, when I am certain, I will keep it shut, and that will be the first free thing I have done in 11 years, and it will be mine. I could not speak. I was 3 days into being certain, she said, when I heard the digging. And I want you to know, and here her voice did shake the only time that when I heard it I was angry. For one moment I was angry because I had finally chosen a thing, and here was the world coming to take even that choice away, the way it had taken all the others. And then I heard you go still on the other side of the door. And I heard you say you were coming. And you asked me, you asked, cover your eyes, you gave me a thing to do, a thing that was mine to do before you even opened it. And I thought, this one is different, this one asks. She wiped her face with the back of a free hand. So I chose again. I chose to drink your water, so to speak. I have been choosing it every day since. That is what I need you to understand about me before tomorrow, before I stand up in that hall. I am not a woman who was rescued. I am a woman who was, at the very last, finally asked, and who is still deciding, every single day, to say yes. Do not stand up tomorrow and call me rescued. Let me stand up as a woman who chose to come back. I will call you, I said when I could, whatever you tell me to call you for the rest of my life. The Winter Court sat 3 days later in the great hall, with every soul in Fenmark who could stand admitted to it. I ordered that a crime built out of silence would be undone in the fullest daylight I could make. I did not sit in judgment as a father would have, hooded and above it. I sat at the side. I put the seat of judgment empty in the middle of the dais with the old law book open on it, so that the hold could see the law itself was hearing this, and not merely a king's temper. Sissel spoke first. I had offered, begged, almost to let her speak from a chair or from behind me, or not at all to let Cadoc's confession carry it. She refused all of it. She stood in the center of the hall in a plain dark gown of her own choosing, no jewels, no crown, a hearth girl's dignity worn like armor, and she told it from the beginning. The ewer, the muniment room, the thing in Oren's hand, the sound of the water jug breaking on the flags. She told it plainly, without a single word aimed to wound, which is the most terrible way a true thing can be told. She named the 11 years. She gave the count, the invented, exact, ferociously kept count, and I watched the hall do the arithmetic on their own faces, watched them set that number against their own 11 comfortable years, and I watched shame move through a whole people like weather. Oren's advocate tried the only defenses left him, that the witness was disordered by her ordeal, and Sissel answered without heat, I kept 11 years of days by a waterskin so that I could be exact for you today. Ask me anything you like about the order of them. That there was no proof but a servant's word, and here Cadoc rose, unbidden, and gave the proof. He named the mason, dead now, who had cut the second door. He named where the lead had been got and who had signed for it in the household books in Oren's own hand, thinking a ledger safer than a body. Havard brought the ledger. The signature was there. 30 years of cleverness undone by the one habit clever people cannot break, which is writing things down. And Orin herself. I gave her the floor at the last, as the law required, the right to speak in her own defense. She stood, an old woman, straight back still, and I saw her weigh the lie one final time, and I saw her understand at last that the floor of it was gone, that there was no board left to stand on. She did not confess. She was too proud, but she did not deny it either. She looked at Sissel across the hall, the hearth girl she had buried, standing there breathing, counted, exact, and she said only, "I did not think anyone would ever look under that cairn." And that was enough. The hall heard it. It was not "I am innocent." It was the complaint of a mind that had made one error, and the error was being found out. A whole people heard the difference. I did not kill her. I had decided it days before in the cold, with Sissel's account of choosing in my ears. My father's father would have hanged them both in the yard and called it justice, and it would have been my rage wearing justice's coat. Instead, I gave them to the law that was sitting open on the dais. Orin to the Lock Road cells for the rest of her life, stripped of name and office. The murder of my great-uncle entered at last in the true record. Caddock, who had confessed unforced, who had wanted for 11 years to speak and been too afraid, whose fear had helped keep a woman in the dark. Caddock I did not free and did not cage. I sentenced him to the open work, to break and mend the Lock Road with his own hands for as many years as Sissel had spent below, and to keep, all that while, the mouth of the old cairn open to the sky. He wept when I said it. I think it was the mercy that broke him, more than a rope would have. Cowards can bear punishment. It is being trusted with a penance that undoes them. Then there was the other reckoning, the private one, that no court could sit for. My father, and the brother my father had mourned honestly for a lie. I had buried the old Alpha believing I knew the shape of his griefs. He had grieved his brother as a man grieves one taken by sickness, sadly, cleanly, the way you grieve what cannot be helped. And it had been a murder in his own house, and he had never known, because a woman he trusted had buried the only witness beneath his feet to keep his grief comfortable and false. I found that I had to mourn my father twice now, once for the man I had put under stone, and once harder, for the man who had died robbed of the truth of his own brother's death, robbed of the justice he would certainly have done, made to walk his last years over a hollow place with a lie sealed under him, and a living woman starving in the dark beneath his own hall while he mourned 3 floors up. I had thought the burial the worst grief I would carry. It was not. The worst was learning what the dead had been cheated of, and being unable to give it back to him, being able only to give it forward. So I gave it forward. I had my great-uncle's death struck from the false record and written true, the murder named, the year corrected. I had a second stone set beside my father's, for the brother, with the true manner of his death cut into it plainly, because I would not let even a kindness be a lie any longer in Fenmark. And I stood the night watch by both stones alone once, and told my father the whole of it aloud, the way you tell the dead things they cannot hear because the telling is not for them but for the teller. I told him I was sorry he never knew. I told him I had found her. I told him I meant to keep her, if she would be kept, and to be a different kind of king than the kind that could be lied to for 30 years by someone standing at his shoulder. The snow came down on the 2 stones and I let it, and when it was done I was, at last, only mourning, clean grief, honest grief, the kind a man can carry, and I went in out of the cold to the one warm window in the hold where a woman was learning to sing in a room with corners. She did not become my queen quickly. I want that known, because the songs will smooth it, and it should not be smoothed. She had had enough of being made into things, a runaway, a corpse to be, and I would not add a queen to the list of things other people had decided she was. She became my queen slowly in her own time, over the turning of more than a year. I watched the weight come back to her. I watched the flinch leave her shoulders by degrees. There was a month where a slammed door in a far corridor would still take her somewhere else for a moment, and then a month where it took her only halfway, and then a season where she could hear a door and simply hear a door. I watched her learn the hold and the hold learn her, how the same people who had said, comfortably, for 11 years that she ran off, now rose to their feet when she entered a room, and did it not because I commanded it, for I never once commanded it, but because a woman who comes up out of that much dark with her truth intact, and her mercy intact teaches a whole people, without a single word, what dignity actually is. She pardoned the kitchen folk who had repeated the runaway lie without knowing it was one, went to them herself, freed them of it, told them plainly they had been lied to same as everyone and there was no debt. She could not be persuaded to hate even the ones who had shrugged. Hating them keeps me down there, she said. I did not climb out to stay in a smaller version of the same hole. And one evening, her own choosing, more than a year after the snow, she came to me in the warm room where I sat, and she had something in her hands as she always did, and this time it was the old law book, the one that had sat open on the empty seat of judgment. She set it in front of me and put her finger on the line about the taking of a mate, the old line, the one that requires it be freely spoken by both, witnessed, uncompelled. I have read it, she said, 3 times. I wanted to be sure there was nothing in it that made it something done to a person. She looked at me steadily, the way she had looked at me across the torchlight in the Undercroft before she knew my name. There isn't. It's a thing 2 people say, so I would like to say it, not because you found me, not because of the bond, though I feel it, I have felt it since the door, I am not going to pretend I don't. I would like to say it because I have spent a year deciding freely in a room with corners, with a door that opens from the inside, and I have decided I want the man who couldn't bury his father while I was breathing. That is my free word, roan, uncompelled, witnessed by the book. Now say yours or don't. Either is allowed. That's the whole point of me now. Either is allowed. I said mine. We were married in the thaw and the open, by the 2 stones and the open cairn both, because she asked for it there. So the true things and the buried things are all in the one place, in the sun, with nothing sealed. And the whole hold stood in the mud and the melt, and watched a hearth girl they had once called a runaway speak a free word and become their queen. There was no crown forced onto her. She carried it in and set it on her own head herself, and turned to face them, and I have crowned no one in my life who crowned themselves like that. Oren died in her cell before that thaw, an old woman at last afraid of the dark she had sent another into, and I felt no triumph in it, and neither did Sissel. We felt only the flat quiet of a thing being over. Caddock lived, and served out his years mending the lock road with his hands, and once a winter he left a lit lamp at the mouth of the old open cairn, and no one ever told him to, and Sissel never asked him to stop. We never sealed that cairn again. It is open to this day, a hollow in the burial field with the sky in it. When the snow falls it fills with white, and in the spring it fills with rain, and the children of the hold are brought to it, and told the true story of it, all of it, the murder and the burial and the 11 years, and the count kept by a waterskin and the wolf that would not let his master mourn until the ground gave up what it was hiding. I made the tellers promise to always tell it true, and to always tell the count her count, the exact one, because that was the number she kept so that it would have happened to a person, and I will not let it become a smear now, not while I am king, not while my children are. People ask me sometimes how I knew, the younger ones especially, who like their stories to have a moment of magic in them. They want me to say the bond told me, that fate reached up out of the ground and seized me. And there is truth in that. My wolf knew her, and I have never once been sorry that I trust the beast in me over the counsel of clever people. But the truest answer is smaller, and I give it to them small. I stood over a grave with a stone in my hands, and something under the earth was breathing, and I chose to believe it over everyone who told me to cover it and go on. That is all. That is the whole of it. Every good thing in the rest of my long life came from the single moment I decided that a breath under the ground mattered more than the peace of the people standing on top of it. She is beside me now as I tell it. She sings in rooms with corners, and she is, whatever she claims, very good, and the whole hold has learned the sound of her. She keeps a lamp lit in our chamber all night, every night, and she will till she dies, and I have never once asked her to put it out. Let it burn. I buried my father the night I found my wife, and I have never been able to think of the one grief without the other joy, the cold stone and the warm hand, the sealed door and the voice behind it saying you came the wrong way, when it was, in the end, the only right way I ever went.